Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
Talk a little football as we continue our Packers potential prospect preview series, where we take a look at a few options that the Packers may have with either their first round pick or an early day 2 pick, just to give you a little bit of a scouting report in case that name is called. You're like, oh, I heard about that guy when DK was talking about him and such. So again, it's realistic options. We're not going to talk about Cam Ward. We're not going to talk about Travis Hunter unless we find out that the Packers all of a sudden jumped up and moved up in the NFL draft. So we're talking about guys that realistically could be there and a realistic position of need for Green Bay. So we've already talked about a defensive tackle. We've talked about a corner. Today, let's talk about a wide receiver and an edge rusher for the Packers. Let's start off with a wide receiver. And I know before the jokes start, Packers actually drafted a wide receiver in the first round. Ha ha, chuckle, chuckle, chuckle. Maybe this year we'll be surprised in that. But we're going to go to Ohio State for this receiver. Ohio State's thrown out some good receivers over the last few years. Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver from the Ohio State. Now, this is a guy, if you've been following along on some mock drafts, you've probably seen some of the mock drafters out there having Emeka going to the Packers with that 23rd overall pick. Ohio State just had their pro day the other day. And if you go to the draft profile for him on NFL.com, his player comp is a former Ohio State receiver that just a couple of years ago, Packers fans wanted Green Bay to draft this guy in the first round. That's Jackson Smith-Njigba from Seattle. You look at him, or you look at Emeka here, 6'1", 202 pounds. He's not going to blow you away with speed. But Daniel Jeremiah has Emeka as his 23rd overall prospect in this draft, saying that he is a strong physical receiver with the ability to play inside or outside. He's quick in his release, and he can fight his way through press coverage. He is more of a one-speed route runner, but he's very, very comfortable working in traffic. He attacks the ball in the air, in the middle of the field. On vertical routes, he tracks the ball well and has a knack for utilizing late hands to prevent defenders from playing the pocket and poking the ball away. He has a great feel for working in zones and adjusting his route if the play is prolonged. After the catch, he relies more on toughness than pure speed to create extra yards. Overall, I view Emeka as an impact slot receiver in the mold of former Buckeye Jackson Smith-Njigba. So, again, he does, even though Daniel Jeremiah says, slot there, this is a guy that has the ability to play inside-outside. And I think we've seen Matt LaFleur and Green Bay over the last couple of years. They like that versatility when it comes with their wide receivers, whether to play inside, outside. Jaden Reed was often thought of okay, when he was drafted, it's okay, that's a slot receiver. And yes, he has played a lot from the slot, but during his Michigan State days, he also spent a lot of time on the outside, and we've seen him play a little on the outside for Green Bay too. So I get it. Maybe better suited, may look like a typical slot receiver in there, but he's got good size to play on the inside and the outside. So Emeka just had his pro day. He ran a 4.45 40 at the pro day. It's not like that's the slowest 40 for wide receivers out there. Okay? That's not bad. That's not bad. And you look at him too, and he's got some muscle. He's built. So it makes sense that he is a wide receiver that's comfortable in traffic playing in the middle because, he's not a small guy. Okay? Yeah, he's not the tallest dude out there. He's 6'1", but he's built, man. You watch some of his film and you watch some of his work. The guy could take a hit. And I think he would be a very good fit within this style of offense. I think the question is, if Green Bay is seriously looking at or seriously considering adding a wide receiver early in the draft, I think the question is do they have a type in mind? Do they want to try to find a bigger receiver to fill in the void left by Christian Watson with his knee injury and potentially maybe free agency after that? Do they want, a 6'3", 6'4" type of receiver that, a vertical threat that way? Are they trying to find that? Is that the priority for them when it comes to a wide receiver? Because if that's the case, then maybe Egbuka is not an option for Green Bay. Because when you look at the depth chart for wide receivers for Green Bay right now, you take away Christian Watson, and you've got, Jaden Reed, a little bit of a smaller receiver. You've got Romeo Doubs. You've got Mecole Hardman. You've got Bo Melton. And then you've got Dontavian Wicks. That's your receiving group right now. And Jaden Reed, you look at him, he's 5'11", about $190, $185, $190. Romeo 6'2", 204. Mecole Hardman, 5'10", about $190. Bo Melton, 5'11", $190. Dontavian Wicks, 6'1", 205. So I think, does Green Bay, if they are serious or really considering adding a wide receiver early in the draft, I think the unknown, at least for us, is do they want to get a guy that's a little bit bigger, a little bit taller to help fill the void left by Christian Watson, or does that not really matter to them? That Emeka could definitely be an option for them, even though he's not a 6'3", 6'4" guy. I think he's a guy that would excel in the style of offense that Matt LaFleur and the Packers run. It just boils down to, do they feel like they've got enough of those type of guys already? The next player we're going to take a look at here, we're going to go back to the defensive side. So our first two players that we looked at all came from the defensive side of the ball. And we're going to take a look at another defensive player, Donovan Ezeiruaku from Boston College. Now, if you hear Boston College, maybe your ears are ringing a little bit because that's where Jeff Hafley was head coach before he was a defensive coordinator for the Packers. So very, very, very familiar with Donovan. Very familiar with him. And, you're going to hear those connections all over the place in the last month or so. You're going to hear Boston College, Jeff Hafley was head coach there, Packers have a need at edge rusher. Is this just a match made in heaven or what? You're going to hear that, right? That's going to be talked about. If it's not already talked about, it's going to be talked about a lot. So and remember, Green Bay's assistant defensive line coach, Vince, came over to Green Bay with Jeff Hafley. He was the defensive line coach at Boston College. So, you've got not outside the defense coordinator, the dude's position coach is also in Green Bay. Green Bay has a need potentially at edge rusher. It just makes a ton of sense, right? Well, here's what Daniel Jeremiah had to say about Donovan. Compact edge rusher with outstanding length, burst, and production. In the pass game, he has a very quick first step and gets on top of blockers in a hurry. He excels at prying open the outside shoulder and cornering towards the quarterback. He has a full array of moves to complement his speed rush. He has won with a club swim, inside counter, spin move, and Euro step. He is an outstanding finisher. Against the run, he needs to be more consistent using his length to stack blocks. He takes them on with his shoulder too often. He shows solid effort on the backside to chase plays. Overall, has an ideal body type to rush the passer, and he has all the tricks in his bag to win against good players. So, one of the things I take away from what Daniel Jeremiah says there is where he says he has the ideal body type to rush the passer. Because I think the biggest question that is going to come up with Donovan and whether he is a fit for Green Bay is the body type, because he's listed at 6'2", 6'2.5", around 250 pounds. Is that enough? Is that big enough to be a 4-3 defensive end in the National Football League? Because you look at his draft profile, it says slightly undersized outside linebacker for a 3-4 front, but he does have long arms and plus athleticism. And this is a guy, too, that last year in college won the Ted Hendricks Award for the nation's top defensive end. He was a first-team AP All-American ACC Defensive Player of the Year, ranked second in FBS with 16.5 sacks, and third with 20.5 tackles for loss. Led the team also with 3 forced fumbles. Oh, and team captain. I wouldn't, if he is still on the board when Green Bay selects at 23, I wouldn't be shocked at all if this is the pick, because of the multiple factors working in his favor that we already discussed. His position coach for the longest time is the assistant D-line coach in Green Bay. The defensive coordinator was his head coach. Packers have a need at getting after the quarterback, pass rushers. If he is a little bit underweight or slightly underweight for their liking, I wouldn't be surprised if they, in his rookie year, kind of use him as a pass rush specialist. Maybe out there on third downs or obvious passing downs. You get him in the weight room and you add a little bulk on him. You look at the production that the guy has put out there. And you look at a need that Green Bay has and just the connections that he already has on this roster, it just makes so much sense that he would be a Packer. It just makes so much. Oh, and Senior Bowl. Right? I mean, Senior Bowl. It connects so many flippin' dots that if he's there, I would have to imagine that if he's still there, that Jeff Hafley is going to be saying, guys, get me this guy. I can work with him. He's going to improve our pass rush. I know him. I know how to put him in a position to succeed, to be successful. I can do it. I need this guy for my defensive line. We can bring him in, and he can be a pass rush specialist his first year while we add a little bulk on him, and then he becomes an everyday player. It's hard to argue the production that Donovan has put out there throughout his college career. You know, you look at 2023, and he only had 2 sacks. Started all 13 games. He had 6.5 tackles for loss, 53 tackles, 2 forced fumbles. A little bit of a down year, right? 2022, 14.5 tackles for losses, 8.5 sacks. Played all 12 games. And in 2021, played in 10 games as a reserve. 21 tackles, 4 for loss, 3 sacks. It checks off a lot of boxes for Green Bay, except maybe one. Does he fit the size that Green Bay wants? And for what's worth too, NFL Draft, their profile says that his play demeanor, skill, and athletic talent are the underpinnings of a productive starter with 3-down value. Yannick Ngakoue is his player comp. And it says on here, too, good football player, not crazy explosive, but smart and productive. That was from an AFC scout. these two guys, and Brian Gutekunst was at the Ohio State Pro Day. So, he got to see Emeka up close in front. There's other guys there, obviously, too. But he got to see Egbuka up front if he's considering him as a potential first-round pick. I wouldn't be surprised if either of these guys. I think I'd be more surprised if it was Egbuka, just because of the fact, holy crap, Green Bay drafted a wide receiver in the first round. I think that would be like, oh my God, they did it, because it's been since Javon Walker. Does it get overplayed a little bit? It gets overplayed a little bit, because it's not like Green Bay hasn't been successful in finding receivers later in the draft, round 2, a little bit later on. Round 2, they've been really good, right? Devontae, Jordy, Jaden. Was Greg a second or third rounder? I think James was a third rounder. Cobby was a second rounder. I mean, the second round has been Green Bay's bread and butter when it comes to finding a wide receiver. So, do they maybe rest on those laurels, saying, hey, we've been able to find dudes in the second round, and that's what we're going to do. Christian Watson was a second round pick. But I wouldn't be surprised if he's that, because he just Egbuka, I think would excel in this style of offense for Green Bay. It's just two questions are, do they already feel like they've got those type of receivers? And do they want a bigger receiver, more of a vertical threat, stretching the field? And then Donovan. You need a pass rusher. You got a guy that's familiar with your defensive coaches already. A very productive pass rusher. Was the top defensive end in college last year, the Ted Hendricks Award winner. Hey, it's a match made in heaven. He may not be there when Green Bay's up, but if he's there, I got to imagine it would be very, very, very hard for Green Bay to pass on him.